Now, who knows how? Nobody knows how. Or if somebody knows and they haven't made it obvious to the masses of the people, how? But the people in the land of Kim, who we call the chemical people, or who we call our chemical ancestors, they devised a system, and they were able to calculate that, yes, in fact, the sun did not appear in the same place every year during the vernal equinox. It stayed inside of a particular constellation, but it moved inside of that constellation. And then, after 2,000 years, somehow, somebody noticed that the sun appeared in a new constellation. So in the first age, let's say it was the age of Leo, for 2,000 years, every year, during the vernal equinox, people would go out and they would see the sun in the constellation of Leo. In that 2001st year, it was no longer, people went out during the vernal equinox, and it was no longer in the constellation of Leo, it was now in the constellation of Aries. Okay? So, somehow, our chemical ancestors decoded the sky. Let's just assume, as Western civilization does, that they didn't live this long. Western society says they didn't live this long. That's an issue. Don't ask me what I think. That's an issue for everybody to analyze on their own. But Western society says that they didn't live this long, so apparently it had to be generations later, or they had to actually still be alive, depending on what your particular spiritual religious view is, which we're not going to get into. But somehow they were able to calculate that after 2,000 years, the sun appeared in a new constellation. So they named this an age. They named that 2,000-year cycle an age. For 2,000 years, people came out during the vernal equinox, and they saw that the sun was in one particular constellation. And then somebody noticed after the 2001st year that it appeared in a new constellation. And they named it the Ages.
I wonder if they just calculated it somehow, or either it was a generational thing where each one took notes for 2,000 years.
If you accept our current view of life and death, then you have to consider all of those things. That it could possibly be in this generation or that generation. But let it be known that there are a group of people who believe that death is a concept that's new. That we have descended to where we live 80, 90, 100, even in biblical days, 500, 600, 700 years. The fact that there's a limit is a new idea to most people who believe in the chemical understanding of the universe. Okay? So, if somebody who supports the chemical understanding of the universe, if you were to ask them that question, they would tell you it was the same people for 2,000 years, plus another 2,000 years, plus another 2,000 years. It was the same people. Not the same race, person. The same people.
For 6,000
If it was me, I was here telling y'all the sun appears in the constellation of Leo every year during the vernal equinox. Every year, I will be saying it for 2,000 years. I will come to y'all and I will say, hey, this year, as last year, as every year in the past, the sun has appeared in the constellation of Leo. But then that 2001st year, I come to you and I say, hey, the sun is in a new constellation. Me,
Well,
same person.
It does kind of make sense because if
That's the only, what some people would deduce that would be the only way that they knew this, is that they experienced it themselves.
Well, not necessarily.
But that's a whole nother discussion. What we're dealing with is the fact that it's accepted. East to west, it's accepted, the astrological ages, okay? So, 2,000 years is considered an astrological age. Why?
because it's when one constellation or moves to the next, or
When the sun moves from
when the sun moves to one constellation to the next.
Right. So, an age, the changing of the ages takes place when the sun moves from one constellation to the next. Okay? Now, There's one more concept that we need to discuss before we get into the ages as they relate to the development of man. And this concept is the great year.
You
Yes.
didn't give us the definition for the precession of the equinox.
Oh, the precession of the equinoxes, for definitive purposes, is the process of the equinox, or rather, let me start that over. The precession of the equinoxes is the process of the sun moving from one constellation to another during the vernal equinox. And that's extremely important. I want all of our students to really understand that we're dealing with, when we say the sun appears in a particular constellation, we're dealing with the fact that it appears in that constellation during the vernal equinox.
Why not during the,
The ages relate to the vernal equinox. Okay? The ages relate to the vernal equinox. So when we say that the sun appears in a particular constellation, we're saying during the vernal equinox. Okay? Which is March 21st of every year. Okay. So now we have the idea of the great year. Now this is one that, in my opinion, it exemplifies what we learned when we learned what an age is. Because when we learned what an age is, we found that somehow people made observations for 2,000 years. And they noticed that the sun moved from one constellation to another during the vernal equinox. One could even question, how did they know what an equinox was?
And how they know it was during the vernal equinox.
And how do they know exactly to look during the vernal equinox and see a particular constellation? But again, that's for you to look up. Now, this exemplifies the point. Not only did they realize that every 2,000 years the sun appeared in a different constellation during the vernal equinox, but they also noticed that after 25,000 years, the sun began its cycle again. They noticed, or one could say, that they calculated by having already, we don't know how they attained it, but let's just say they have the ecliptic orbit. They know what the ecliptic orbit is. So they know what the constellations of the zodiac are. They have at least observed the 12 constellations, and they have defined their months and their calendar based off of the 12 constellations. So one could say that they calculated at this point that since there are 12 constellations, and since it takes approximately 2,000 years for the sun to move from one constellation to another during the vernal equinox, then it must take around 24 to 25,000 years for this entire cycle to take place. And that is considered a great year. A great year, which suggests that there are some people who viewed 25,000 years as 1 year. Suggestion. Okay?
is that accepted? Or not like,
I mean, this is logical deduction.
right?
And when you say accepted, you have to say accepted by who? Is it accepted by Westerns, by Western literary sources? I don't know how much the subject is delved into, but what I do know is that it is accepted that 24 to 25,000 years, depending on who you're talking to, what encyclopedia you're reading from, what scholar you're dealing with, that 24 to 25,000 years is in fact a great year. That's accepted.
But
Logical deduction tells you that
somebody had to come up with it.
for that to be a great year, then it's just like asking, are there extraterrestrials? Like logical deduction, this hasn't been proven, but logical deduction,
So it's been, but
You
that's
know.
another. But I'm just saying because they say that man only goes back 6,000 years. So how you gonna tell me that man goes back 6,000 years, but at the same time say that a great year is 25,000?
oh, we could examine the contradictions in the Western account of history to the end of time.
Okay,